Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 8 and a bit of a Season 9 tease. So we are officially 3/4 of the way through this season, 75% of the way through if you want that type of number, which feels weird. Like, time moves just way too fast sometimes. It's crazy. Like, it feels like we were only watching Armageddon like a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month if you want to stretch it. But speaking of stretching, we are in the home stretch and we know we have a pretty big end of the season coming our way, as we have heard in previous interviews. So the overall outline of the finale for this season was potentially written as a series finale, as there hadn't been any season renewal, announcement or news at the time of them writing it. Now, of course, we know that Season 9 of The Flash is confirmed and coming our way in early 2023, so there would have been some minor changes in regards to it not being the end and there being set up, for whatever is coming our way in Season 9. But just due to how it was initially set up, I think we should all be excited for what is coming our way in the last handful of episodes in this season, just because they would have been building it to be a series finale, or at least be on the level of a series finale. Now, as you would be used to by now, Eric Wallace, the showrunner for The Flash, loves to do interviews and talk about the show, but in the most recent episode that went by, the Still Forced episode, he was the director of it. So of course he is going to do interviews about it. And he did two main ones I want to pick from. Not go over the whole interviews, but just pick some interesting stuff going forward. So that's what we'll be focusing on in this video. Mainly it will be an interview from Entertainment Weekly, but also there'll be a couple of questions that were picked from an interview with the Flash podcast as well. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts and opinions and just reactions to any of the stuff in regards to all this. I'm always curious to read what you guys are thinking. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, looking forward to any of this stuff, and just want to show your support, why not drop a like on the video to do all that? So yeah, let's start off with some of these questions from the Entertainment Weekly interview. Because they're fairly interesting for stuff going forward. There's also a lot that happens by the end of this episode. There's clearly something wrong with the Still Force and with Dion's betrayal, so where does this leave Team Flash? We've started our interlude episodes with Funeral for a Friend last week. There's a couple of them in a row, including next week. They're all different. Funeral for a Friend was a coda dealing with the aftermath of Frost's death. This week is kicking off the search for Iris, and next week is actually a funny episode. What's interesting is the more I got in the process of putting this episode together, the more I started to realize we're really setting up the finale of Season 8 in this episode in a strange way that I don't think is overt. Obviously, we all have sorts of surprises coming in the season finale this year, but there are little clues throughout this episode that, hopefully, the audience can pick up that are really going to pay off in this year's finale. This search for Iris and the cure for her time sickness are very much what we're leading to in this year's finale, so this episode, in a strange way, feels like a prelude to the end of the season. That was not intentional, but it sort of became that through the writing. Now, this is one thing that I've seen a lot of people concerned about is, are they really making this Iris time sickness such a main part of the season? And I doubted that it was going to be, because I just thought, is it really going to be that interesting? And the Still Force itself was interesting last episode, but I just don't know if this search for Iris will be overly interesting if she's not there. Like, we already had something like this when Iris is in the mirror world, mirrorverse, whichever way you want to call it. And this just feels like the same thing, but we're just not seeing Iris because Candace Patton's gone for 4 episodes or something. So hopefully it's not focused in on too much and it's just like a thing that's weaved through the episodes that then comes up again, in episode 18 or 19. Because if you're spending so much time on it, but you're not seeing the effect of it on Iris at the time, is it really that interesting? I think the answer is no. So that has me a tiny bit worried. But it seems like, next week's episode 16 with Old Man Barry or rapidly aging Barry, that's the focus. And there's an episode after that, which apparently, unfortunately, is revolved around Allegra, which I don't see many people getting too excited for that one. But once again, there's things that are focused on other things. So it seems like this Iris time sickness thing is just weaved through the episodes in the background with either other characters or maybe end credit things or something like that. So my worries are put to ease a tiny bit there, but at the same time, I don't think the payoff is worth it being that many episodes of mystery, if you want to call it. But this carries on to the next question when it says, does that mean Iris's time sickness and what's going on in the Still Force are going to play a big part in the next graphic novel arc, or is that going to come back in play in the finale? You're absolutely right. It's a big part of our final graphic novel of the season. We have 3 this year. Armageddon was our first one. Then we had a few interludes. Then we had Death Revisited, our second one of the season, which is of course the Deathstorm arc. And then Iris's time sickness and curing it will lead Team Flash into a direct confrontation with the next big bad of the final graphic novel. Now, obviously, we know that that's Eobard Thawne in some way, shape, or form. Whether there's other factors at play or forces at play, notice the interesting wording there, is another question. But once again, it depends, like, is this build up with this time sickness going to be worth it in the end? And that's up for that's up for debate. But this isn't helped by the next thing in this interview, which makes me even question a bit more. But once again, it's one of those things we just have to wait and see how it plays out, because you don't want to jump too early into like criticizing it, because you can take a big L when you do that. But this is the next question. Can you reveal what the title of the third graphic novel arc is? No, I'm not going to, because it is so spoilery. It literally has the name. It's like Deathstorm with Death Revisited. Literally in the name of the graphic novel is the villain, which we don't want to spoil, so I'm so sorry, I can't. But don't worry, Iris's time sickness will be resolved by the end of Season 8. She will be cured, and I'm happy to report that Iris and Barry will be reunited joyously. They're not breaking up. Neither of them are dying. It is a happy, happy ending at the end of Season 8. Which, once again, I think saying that in an interview sort of maybe defeats the purpose of trying to say it's like, oh, this big time sickness mystery. Will she be cured? Because you sort of just spoiled it there. In regards to this graphic novel thing, I will do a video on this, and I'll mention it here because I've already posted it on Twitter by the time this video will be out. But from what I've found online, the final 2 episodes of this season, so episode 19 and 20, are called Negative Part 1 and Negative Part 2. So I'm going to assume that somewhere in the graphic novel arc name for this third one that's ending off the season, Negative is in there. Maybe. Not saying it 100% is, but if we're going off like Death Revisited as the second graphic novel arc, 2 of the episodes had death in them. Death rises, death falls. So I'm going to assume Negative is somewhere in that graphic novel name for the final one, but you can make your own mind up there, I guess. Next up, if you can't reveal the title of the graphic novel, are you able to at least explain what you wanted to explore with the last chunk of the season? Yeah, there's a couple of driving forces behind the final graphic novel of the season. When I first came up with the idea, I wasn't sure whether or not this was going to be a series finale or season finale. I had to make a decision prematurely to wrap up a lot of things, not just for the season, but there's 1 or 2 hanging questions. One in particular from the past of the show, specifically going back to season 1, that needed to be resolved in the same way that we were able to resolve what really happened to Ronnie when he went into that black hole. If this is the last season, there are some unanswered questions that I want answered, let alone that I feel would be great to answer for the audience. That's a big driving point behind this last graphic novel, to answer some hanging threads. Number 2 is it's very much been a season with Barry and Iris apart. She's been on this coastal journey with Sue, dealing with Tinya and the time sickness. Meanwhile, Barry has held down the forward Team Flash as a leader who's leveled up. We needed to see the 2 worlds of Barry and Iris come back together in a way that honored their epic love story. You'll see at the end of the season, in solving her time sickness, it's done in quite an epic way that will touch upon things that have been planted throughout the entire season. All of those seeds are going to come back together. That's the other thing driving this season finale this year. It kicked off in this episode with a discussion about how in the Still Force, the past, the present, and the future all coexist. Well, if Iris is lost in the Still Force, what does that mean for her past, her present, and yes, you guessed it, her future? At the end of the episode, Barry tells Nora, go back to the future and check in on Iris, make sure everything's okay. That is not a coincidence. She needs to get to 2049 because there might be some interesting things going on that we have kicked off here, which we'll see pay off in the season finale. When Barry gives his big speech when he's in the Lotus position and seeing the future and the past and the present all at the same time, there's that theme again that we say and that Dion says. Take a note of that. So that has me intrigued. Obviously, we have the epic love story where let's be honest, it's not really that epic because it's all over the place. But I'm very curious in regards to this season 1 thing he's talking about, because he references back to Ronnie in the black hole. Look, we don't know what's going on with Rick Cosner and this Eddie Thawne thing. Apparently, he was back for 3 more episodes in the back half of the season. He was in 1. So is he in 2 more, or was that a lie to sort of like confuse us as the audience as to what was going on with him? I have no idea. I have no idea if we're getting Eddie back again in another 2 episodes or not, that's another wait and see, I guess. But I am very curious to see what this tie back to season 1 is, if it isn't anything to do with Eddie. Like, what is that thing that has to be resolved? What's that hanging thread? And in regards to this, future thing, there's, I think it was during season 6, I want to say, that Eric Wallace was questioned about, if they're going to do anything about that storyline from the comics where Iris was actually from the future and was sent back in time. I've been against that because I think it loses some legitimacy in regards to her and Joe's relationship as a father and daughter, and I wouldn't really want to see that. Regardless of what you think of Iris, I think you can agree that that sort of taints that relationship a bit. So I personally didn't want to see that, but that wording makes me go, are they going to do that? Or is it meant to be this thing where Iris is unsafe in the present and has to go to the future? Is that meant to be a sign that they're writing Iris? I don't even know if it's meant to be a sign of them writing Iris off. It seems a bit messy if that's the way they're going to go about it. But then again, they've planted a seed there where potentially could grow into that, storyline or that resolution. So once again, it's a wait and see. Especially if they were planning for this to be a series finale, then maybe they might have, I don't know. It's a bit confusing once again. We'll have to wait and see. I'm getting a bit of a headache trying to think about it. Now that we know there will be another season of The Flash, are you planning next season as the final season? I hope next year isn't the last season, knock on wood, but I have to now plan going into season 9. I mean, I have to plan it that way just in case. I don't want to get caught unaware. I don't want the audience to get caught with a cliffhanger that doesn't get resolved or anything like that, which is a bit of a reference to Legends and Batwoman and some other shows. I want to make sure that we complete the journey that Barry, Iris, and Team Flash have been on. This isn't a spoiler, but you'll see the moment in this season's finale, which was the original ending, where we've resolved the plot, we've defeated the big bad, and all that stuff. That was going to be the end of the season. Then I guess the show as a whole. Then we've got the pickup. Thank goodness. You'll see something that will set up next year in a very fun and delightful way that both resolves the shenanigans in the Still Force, which are going to get wilder. This is our biggest, craziest season finale ever, and it starts here. The good news is that we do resolve it. Barry and Iris are okay, and we've even got the bonus that we got to add a little tag to set up next year that I'm very excited about. But I will approach next season as the final season unless somebody tells me differently, and I hope they do because there's still many more Flash stories to tell. Now, it needs to be said, once a show gets past that initial contract stretch for the actors, so the Flash that was 7 seasons for mainly Grant, I think the other actors won 5-season contracts to start off, and then they went season by season, I think. Or maybe they signed on for 2 seasons up to season 7 to match Grant. But once that ends, they usually go season by season, which they already did with season 8, and now they're doing with season 9. The only time you don't really see that is maybe 30-minute comedies. Those shows can sometimes get 2 or 3 season renewals at a time, just because they're low risk for what they are. But we know that we heard from the upfronts that, Riverdale has been confirmed for a final season. So they've, setting it up as a final season, they get advertised that way. And they're in their 7th season. So that would be when the contracts run up most likely for those actors. So with The Flash, they said that they're not saying it's the final season at this point. Now, the big thing is that we've got 7 or 8 months or something from this point until season 9 premieres. So there's a long time for them to decide whether season 9 is going to be the final one. Before they even start filming in probably September or October. So there's a long time until they really have to make their decision up, I think. So definitely don't think season 10 is happening. That's what I've said, I think, in a previous video as well. But regardless, because, he went into this, Eric Wallace, planning it to be, or potentially be, a final season, not leaving a cliffhanger, I can't wait to see what this finale is like. And it's sort of I guess, it's sort of a good thing, I guess, that maybe he thought it was going to be the final season, because he probably put more effort into the finale in regards to the size and scale of it. So that gets me pretty damn excited. And also, whatever this tease is for next season as well, that gets me excited. But speaking of next season, if next season's the last season, where do you want to see the show end? I'll be very honest with you, I'm still trying to figure that out. I know what the plot endgame of next year is, that's not a problem. Ironically, it's set up very succinctly in the season finale for this year. However, where all the characters end up emotionally, that's still in flux. It's been a very intense 3 years trying to make a show during the pandemic, so I've had to be so far ahead of the game all the time in order to make sure the show just gets on the air. Now, for the first time in between seasons 8 and 9, I'm going to get a bit more of a chance to get a little bit of a breather and to think about where do I really want to send these characters off emotionally as people and as human beings. what do I want their final goodbyes to this wonderful, loyal audience to be? That's what my summer homework is. So once again, I think really heading into next season, you're probably going to get some personal stories, if that makes sense, or like as if it is the last hurrah for characters. Because even if there is a season 10, which I personally don't think there is, I think season 9 is going to be the final season. It just feels like the right time to end the show. But even if there is a season 10, which I'd still be happy with if that's the case, I think that would mainly be like maybe even a shorter season than maybe like what we got with Arrow's final season, and be very Barry focused. So I think this season, like next season, sorry, like season 9, will be more about like tying up some of those supporting characters alongside whatever the main story is that's going on. So that's what I could see happening. However, it is a good thing that I'm reading this, that there seems that there's going to be a bit more time to focus on setting up the season and properly planning out plot points a bit better. Because that's always an issue with not just like The Flash, but any network show, you are rushing a lot of the time. You know, you don't get that much of a break between seasons, let alone to write the episodes. So, you know, that's a bit of a good thing, if you want to call it that. There's a bit more preparation time going into next season. But that was the end of the Entertainment Weekly article. So we have 2 questions here from the Flash podcast interview. And this one was much longer. I'll link both interviews in the description down below, because I did miss out questions from the Entertainment Weekly one, despite how much we're talking about it from. But yeah, I'll leave both interviews linked in the description down below. But we're only going to go over 2 of the God knows how many questions it was from the Flash podcast one. So the first thing is that Eric Wallace was asked about the Easter eggs in episode 15, the most recent one. So like in regards to that Zoom and Godspeed newspaper, and of course that name drop, which of course was Max, which is, you know, Max Mercury. Like I said, I think perhaps I've revealed too much about the season finale and about season 9 with all these spoilers. But you're right, nothing is there by chance, nothing is a coincidence. As everybody else knows, I've said this many times, Zoom is my favorite villain. I'm determined to get him back on the show somehow. I would say that is the doorway you all will see in episode 15. That's the doorway. I won't tell you when it's happening or where it's going or any of those things. I will also say to you, because that was the still force, which is the past, present, and future all mixed together, your eyes can deceive you at times. So what you exactly see might not be exactly what is coming, but a variation of it. Who knows? As for the other name drop that we have in the episode, there's a reason for that. Keep watching. So Max Mercury, that's what he's talking about in regards to the name drop. Now, this makes me wonder, is he the cameo in the finale? We were told that no one would be able to guess it at the time, which was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. But now we have that name drop. So is it Max Mercury in his comic book suit? It's been a speedster that many people have wanted to see show up, even though a lot of people wouldn't know who Max Mercury is either. I might do a video on him maybe in a couple of days, just to break him down for those that are interested in, you know, what he could, you know, do on the show. But also in regards to the Zoom and Godspeed newspaper, he's saying sort of like, hey, that, you know, the date on that newspaper was May 4th, 2024, but maybe it's not set in stone that it's 2024. Maybe in one timeline that happens in 2024, but the timeline will be on in season 9, it happens in 2023. Maybe that's the hint there. He said for a couple of seasons, pretty much since he took over the show, that he wanted to bring Zoom back. He's still yet to do that in actual like physical form. So I think we all want to see Zoom back. The issue is we don't really know what happened to him post-crisis exactly. So I'd love to see him back. I think Teddy Sears would come back and play him in a heartbeat as well. So just do it. I mean, especially if season 9 is the final season, do it. And finally, you mentioned that you're going to have a conversation with a Supergirl alum who hasn't been on The Flash. How did that said meeting go? Is that something we could look forward to in season 9? The meeting went wonderfully. During the course of the meeting, I figured out how now to get them into the show, because it's our time and I'm putting together my document for season 9. The question was, how will this particular Supergirl character fit in with a particular story for one of our Flash regulars? It's very important that they mesh and that the storyline speaks to both characters. I'm happy to report that mystery and that problem has been solved. I don't know if we can work it out schedule-wise now, but for me, creatively, the biggest hurdle has now been leaped over, and this particular person was like, oh, this sounds fantastic, let's do this. I said, okay, I'll get back to you, I'll call you in 4 months. So fingers crossed. I don't like to promise things that aren't definitive, because a lot of things can happen. This performer could be on another TV show or in a movie or on Broadway or wherever. I have no idea. Our episode order for season 9 is still not locked in. Even I, as I'm planning for season 9, have to have a little leeway in it because I might get more episodes than I think I'm getting. I might get less. I have to kind of juggle all of those balls. But I am now very cautiously optimistic that the conversation I referred to can happen. We definitely had a big step forward on that, so stay tuned. Now, who is this Supergirl alum? Now, most would want Martian Manhunter. I think the issue with that is that he's been on the... I guess the issue is like, do you count crossover episodes that were a Flash episode? Is that what do you count those? Because if that's the case, I'm pretty sure Martian Manhunter has been on the Flash. And of course, Alex Danvers was on Armageddon, which was the Flash. So do you rule out those two characters? So does that leave a character like Dreamer? I guess, what's her name? Kelly Olsen. Yeah, Kelly Olsen? Yeah, Kelly Olsen. I don't think she's been on a Flash episode. If that's the case, it's... Because the only one I think most people would be overly interested in would be Martian Manhunter. But I think if you're counting crossover episodes, he's been in a Flash episode. But also one of the things is that he says that he wants to involve this Supergirl alum with one of the other Flash regulars, at like a storyline there. So that wouldn't be Barry, because you just say, okay, well, I've got to figure out how to write them with Barry. So it's obviously one of the supporting characters. In that case, who? So that little line makes me rule out anyone overly interesting in regards to like fun for the show, like action stuff. But then again, it's a wait and see. If you're including crossover stuff, you're probably you're narrowing it down to either, I guess, Dreamer or Kelly Olsen. And I have a feeling it'd probably be Kelly Olsen. Because if it's in regards to lining that character up with a supporting character, I mean, Kelly Olsen doesn't have powers or anything like that, so I don't know if she'd be out in the field with the Flash or anything like that. So that might disappoint a lot of people. Once again, it's a wait and see who it is, and it might not even happen, but yeah, we'll have to wait and find out, I guess. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. That's all it'll talk about. As I said, I'll leave both interviews linked in the description down below. But if you enjoyed the video, it would be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show your support. Let me know in the comment section down below everything we went over, or your thoughts on everything we went over. I'm always curious to hear what you guys are thinking, especially in regards to some of that stuff, that for the end of the season, leading into next season as well. Curious to see if there's any theories that you might have. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.